Okay, we're continuing our shiurim on Navi. Again, we're holding in Sefer Yeshua, Parak Aleph, Pasuk Yud Ches. We're going to have a whole bunch more shiurim over here, going through different sugis of Merit B'Malchus. So the Pasuk says, Rak Chazak Ve'amatz, that's how the Pasuk ends off. And the Metzudah says, La'anesh HaMordim, to punish those who rebel, V'leilim Chalak V'edecha, and you shouldn't be forgiving with your kavod. Now, we know that the din of Merit B'Malchus, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Malachim, Parak Gimel Halacha Ches, which by the time we're done, this series of shiurim, you'll know this Rambam backwards and forwards. Plus, Kol HaMored B'Melech Yisrael, anybody who rebels against the Jewish king, Yesh LaMelech Rishus LaHargoi, the king has the right and the permission and the entitlement to kill him. Afilu Gazar L'Echem Rishara Am Sheyelech L'Makom Ploni V'Leholach. Even if the king commanded and decreed upon a person from, a simple person from the nation, that he should go to a certain place and he didn't go, that in and of itself is enough for the king to punish him. Like the Gemara says in Kedushin Daf Mem Gimel, with the story of Uriah HaChiti, which was a story in Sefer Shmuel about David HaMelech, and he was considered a Mard B'Malchus. That's why David was allowed to kill him. And Tosfos brings B'Shem Rabbeinu Tam over there, that David said that he should go to his house to eat and to drink. And he refused. He said, I want to fight in the war together with the rest of Klal Yisrael. The Rambam continues, or the Melech told a person that he shouldn't leave his house, and he does leave. Like we see in Malachim, Parak Beis, the Shlomo Melech commanded Shimi ben Gera, who was his own Rebbe, that he shouldn't leave Yerushalayim, and he left Yerushalayim. And when he left Yerushalayim, he was Mechayiv Misa because of Merit B'Malchus. So the question is that we're going to ask, that we're going to discuss, is that why didn't David kill him? Why did he leave it up to Shlomo to kill him? So it's a very fascinating discussion. One of the things is that it says in Chazal, because his Torah was so chashuv and so chaviv, that they just couldn't do it. That is the koyach HaTorah. Now, does the koyach HaTorah of that supersede the halacha of somebody that's mechuyev misa? So then maybe it would sound like we explained previously, that the concept of killing a person who's being married b'malchus, that if the king sees to it as an affront, that it's an affront to his honor and to the honor of the malchus, and that he has to do something to change that. Chayav Misa, meaning this person is Chayav Misa v'rata l'harga yiharik, meaning if he wants to kill him, he could. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, that's our pasuk that we're dealing with here. Kol isha sheyamreh es picha, anybody who rebels against what you said. V'chein kol hamavazas hamelech, or somebody who embarrasses or insults the king, or curses him. Yesh lamelech rishus laharga kishimi ben Gera. The king has permission to kill him like Shimi ben Gera. Now the Achrayim are very busy with this, that it's mashma from the Rambam, that everything depends on the Ratzon HaMelech, that if the king wants to kill the Merit B'Malchus, he wants to kill him. If he wants to forgive him and pardon him, he can. Now, they all ask from the Gemara Kedushin, Naflamed Beis that says, Melech Shemach Lal Kvede and Kvede Machel. Shenemar Sam Tasam Alecha Melech Shetehei Masay Alecha. That the pasuk says that a king who is not allowed to forgo his honor, because the pasuk says, "Sam Tasam Alecha Melech." So obviously, we're going to say the answer that didn't apply to Yeshua, and that's where it comes from. But then, how does the Rambam bring this pasuk in to teach us the din of Merit B'Malchus? And the Achronim answered that there's a difference between kavod and a bizayon. That dafka by something that a person could do something that's a direct bizayon to the king, and then there's something that a person could do it's just not b'chavadik to the king. If someone slaps the king across the face, so that's direct disrespect to the king. Yes, but if somebody does something, refuses to do something that the king says, so he's not going. He's going against the king, but there's something that's outright bizayon, and something that's just not b'chavadik. So something that's only a header of kavod, something that's an action that's not fulfilling the kavod that the king desires and the king wants from this person. Like the Rambam says an example of a person that should go to point A and he doesn't go there, so then that's going to be very much dependent on the ratzon of the king, and if the king doesn't want to kill him, even if it's considered a Merit B'Malchus, then he, if the king wants to kill him, he'll kill him, and if not, not. However, if someone's mavaza the king outright, and then then the king doesn't have a right to be Meichel. And we'll see different kings, different stories in Tanakh, how that played out. And the Poskim write a similar concept that even though a Chacham Shemachel al Kvei Machel, but somebody who's Mavazah, the covet of a Talmud Chacham, meaning he's Mavazah, the stature of a Talmud Chacham, his covet is not going to be Nimchal. And really it's a Gemara, because the Gemara says that what's an Apikairis? An Apikairis is somebody, well, we think an Apikairis is a science teacher that we don't like, but an Apikairis is somebody who says, Ma'ahani la Rabbanan. What do these rabbis accomplish for us? What did these Talmidei Chachamim do for us? By the way, you know what they do for us? They uphold the world. I don't know if the world means anything to you, but that's what Talmidei Chachamim do for us. That's just a small thing that they do, you know. Now, the question obviously is that why didn't David HaMelech kill Shimi ben Gera even though he was mafazah him? Now, many Achronim understand that David HaMelech was at a point in his life where he was in a shtickle galus. He didn't have so when he was in that galus, when he was chased out of Yerushalayim because of what Avshalom was doing, so he didn't have a din of melech, even though he be'etzem was a melech, but at that time, he didn't have a din of active melech, and at that time, there was a big movement to follow after Avshalom and not to follow after David HaMelech. The Gemara Ksubis on Daf Yud Zayin says, Tanu Rabbanan Mavirin es hameis milufnei Akala. We pass a mace in front of Akala, but Zev Ezem milufnei Melech Yisrael. And both of them, Saya Melech and Saya Mace and Saya Akala, we stop that what they're doing and we let the king go first. Amru Olav al Agripas HaMelech she'avar milufnei Kala v'shavchu Chachamim. And the Gemara says a story about Agripas HaMelech who stopped Akala, who stopped before Akala, and he let the Kala go first, and the Chachamim praised him. And the Gemara asks, they're praising him as if he did a good thing. Ravashi says, even if we'll say that a Nasi, meaning Ravashi says, that according to the Manda Omar, that says that a Nasi, a leader of Klal Yisrael, does not have a din of a melech, which we spoke about before in previous shurim, that it's Kenzain that Yeshua had din of a Nasi. That if a Nasi wants to forgo his honor, he can, but that din does not apply by a melech. A king is not allowed to forgo his honor. The Omar Mar, like the Gemara says, which is the Gemara Kedusha that we mentioned earlier on the Flamed Beizim and Beizim Tasam Alecha, Melech Jetehei Masa Alecha. And for the Gemara, Prashas Dracham Havai. The Gemara says it was at a fork in the road, so they didn't. It wasn't like an official procession that they saw that the Kala saw Agrippas coming or Agrippa saw that the Kala was coming. It just happens to be that they landed at the corner at the same time. So he waved her and said, you could go first. So the Chachamim said, he's a mensch, we could do that. Rashi says of the it wasn't recognizable to the bystanders that they were passing in front of her. But it looked like, it worked out well, that it looked like that, she was passing and then he was going. So it looked nice that, he was stopping for her, but that's not really what happened. It's mashma from the Maskanos HaGemara that the story with Agrippas, that he wasn't Meichel and his covet. And in a situation like this, when it was a Prashas Dracham, when it was like a fork in the road, so it's not considered a mechila on the Melech's covet. Now the emes is that the source of this story in the Gemara comes from a Brayso Masechtas Machas in Perkei Aleph, and over there it says that the Chachamim were shabeachim, but Amr Lei Ma Ra'is. They asked him, what did you do? Why did you do this? Why did you stop there? What did you see? Amar Lahem, he said to them, Ani Neitel Keseh B'chol Yom, I take a crown every day. So I'm used to being important. I'm important every day. V'zois Titel Kisareha Shoachas. She's a Kala. So today is her big day. Give her a moment to shine. Right? Like Rashi says in Parshas Vayechi, Tala B'nei Sagadlei. I'm just wondering out loud. Chasim Daim Lamelech. And of course, it goes without saying that the Kala is Daim Lamalka, even though it doesn't say that anywhere. But it'll be here, from this Brayso Masechtas Machas, Ulai ve'Evsher, there's welcome to say that Agrippas wanted to show Chashivas, and the Chachamim were Mishabeach, so Vais Toist is an Indian to be Mishabeach, to let the Kala shine. Zichah, do what you can to make the Kala feel good and feel special. So it's mashma that he was Meichel, and he was mevater on his keser and his covet for one shah, for one moment, because of the covet of a kala. So now we could explain the concept of a covet HaMelech in two different ways. That the one thing is that it's the nation, the people, accepts upon themselves to constantly be meisiv in the covet of the Melech, and to make pomp and ceremony. And the king himself, if everyone's involved in this pomp and ceremony, the king can't come out in his carriage, busy with folding up a slice of pizza, stuffing it in his face. It's a bizayon. So there's two things. There's the Melech, and then there's the Malchus. This that a king can't just do whatever he wants, that's because of himself, but also because of what the Malchus is representing. So this pomp and ceremony, that's because the Melech is also commanded to be shomer on this covet as well. He has to protect this covet. Secondly, that aside from the concept of to do active maisim, to show covet for the Melech, and to be maisiv covet for the Melech, and to praise the Melech, and to talk about him, and to make him feel important. There's also another thing, that you're not allowed to do things, the shlili, you're not allowed to do things that take away from the covet of the Melech, to be mevazah the Melech. So if it wouldn't have been a Parshas Drachim, in this case, avada would be that the king would go in front of the Kala, because it would be a bizayon for the Melech not to. And that's the concept of Melech Shemachal al Kvaydai, is En Kvaydai Malchal. Because when he's coming to be Malchal on his bizayon, he can't be Malchal on his bizayon. His covet, that's him. That's his personal right, that he could say, go ahead, go in front of me. But to be Malchal on his bizayon, that somebody wanted to be Mavazah him, so that his covet is not, he doesn't have the right to be Malchal, and that's because that covet belongs to the Malchus. But in a case where it's a Parshas Drachim, so we could say that it depends, that the Melech is just doing his thing, and it's not necessarily understood that it's like a bizayon, just that there was something that he could have done to add to his covet, but if he would have agreed to go with the Kala a little bit, if the Kala and her ceremony would have stopped to be able to make way for the king, that would be Moisef covet to the Melech. But he turned the tables over here, and he changed it that everybody should focus their attention. He said, I get attention all the time. I want to focus attention to the Kala. So in this way, he's able to be Michael for a couple of moments on his Keser of Malchus, kidei that the Kala should feel good about herself, and to, like the Brisa says, to be Neitel Kisareha Sha'achas. This concept of covet and bizayon reminds me of a Gavaldiga story that Rav Gustman said by my grandparents. My grandfather, Olav Shalom, was Talmud Muvuk of Rav Gustman, and by his Sheva Brachas, so people dry their hands on the paper towels by the sink, and then they throw the paper towel in the garbage, and sometimes they're not such great basketball players, and they get paper towels land on the floor. So Rav Gustman was standing by the sinks, and he was picking up the garbage that was on the floor and throwing it in the garbage. So someone said, Rosh Hashiva, was tusto. Rosh Hashiva, what are you doing? So he tells him like this. He says, covet you can't give me. Why? Because I had the biggest covet in the world. When I was 19, I was on the Bezdin of Reb Chaim Moiser, and it was by the Knesset Gedolah, and I walked in, and the Reb Chaim Moiser stood up for me, and the Chofetz Chaim stood up for me. So once they stood up for me, then everybody that was there, who knows how many, 10,000 people stood up for me. There's no bigger covet than that. And Bizyonis he can't give me because what the Nazis did to him. Unfortunately, he suffered tremendous tzaras at the hands of the Nazis. Okay. Nachal kasha that the Achronim asking the Rambam is that the Rambam writes that a Melech is able to be Moichel and to punish those that rebel against him. Now, the Gemara says in Yuma Daf Chav Beis and Beis, this is a whole shir in and of itself, which we're not going to go through all the details of it now, but it'll keep on coming up again and again. Rav Yehuda Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, and Pnei Manen Ashol, why was Shaul HaMelech punished that his malchus should be taken away from him? Because he was forgiving and forgoing on his covet. Shenamar, like the pasuk says, Bnei B'lial Amr Mayashi Zeva Yevazuhu V'Lehiviu LeMincha VeYihi Then when people, the Bnei B'lial, the free thinkers, and the people that were making a rash, they made a rash, and they were saying, "What's this person going to do?" And they're mavazim, he's a no goodnik, and everybody was presenting the king with all their nice gifts when he became king. But he came achrish, and he was quiet. He tuned them out, so to speak. He was mavral midaisim. Atalma gelernt, and a mavral midaisim is a gevaldige madrege. But Ken Zayn, when you're a melech, you have to stand up for the malchus, not for your personal feelings, but for the covet of the malchus. And they explained this based on what Rashi says over there. At the beginning of his malchus, he was marchal on his covet. And he showed from himself that he doesn't have the wherewithal to be a proper melech. So l'chari is makom to be merchalik between the tchilas hamalchus. When a new melech comes in, he signs 300 executive orders on the first day, another 300 executive orders on the second day. He completely changes the entire face of the country, puts everything in place. And once he establishes who he is, I'm the boss, I'm the melech of this place, so then I could be Michael. But till I establish my malchus of who I am and what my malchus is all about, I cannot be Michael anybody. I am absolutely not forgiving. What happened was Shaul was not established as a melech yet, and he was Michael. So Chazal have a big problem with that, and they say that's why Shaul was punished. He has to instill fear, and he has to show them who's in charge, and he has to show them who's boss and who's the melech. And once he does that, and people accept him, and people understand what he's all about, so then he could be mevater, and then he could be Michael on his covet, and then he could tune out all the people that are being vazah him. But this mechila, he was megala that he's pasnish to be a melech. So that's one type of covet, being Michael. Now there's a mechila that once the malchus is already established and it's been around for who knows how long, and he was nisyashev b'malchusai, and he showed off his powers and he showed off what he's good at. So then to be Michael somebody at one time for some guy who made some comment, he's not going to stare from it. He'll be Michael. There's not going to be any pegia in the malchus. It's all good. Now the thing was with Shaul HaMelech that the story goes that even throughout his reign, he continued to be a humble person and a tanua. It was nech ba'lakelim, the pasuk says, v'yarei as ha'am, like the pasuk says. And he was intimidated, and not intimidating. A king has to be intimidating al pi Torah. Like the pasuk says in Sefer Shmuel, Perek Vav. And Shmuel gives him musar and tells him, "Halayim katan ata be'einech, if you're small in your eyes. Rosh Shiftei Yisrael, are you the leader of Klal Yisrael? Ve'amashach Hashem lemelech al Yisrael. Hashem appointed you to be the leader of Klal Yisrael, and therefore it was nigzer on him that Hashem would take away the malchus from him." So what does this mean? So in the Akdama to Reinik Yamtiv, he writes a Bir Nifla to understand the Shackle of Itaria, what was going on between Shaul and Shmuel. We know the three mitzvahs when you come into Eretz Yisrael, to be Ma'abed HaMelech, to be Bachros Har Shaul HaMelech, and to build a Beis HaMikdash. Shaul HaMelech was taxed with the job of getting rid of Amalek. There was a fight with Amalek in his days, and he was lax in killing out Agog. And we know Agog had a beer that night, which caused one of our favorite characters in the Tanakh, Haman, to be born as a descendant of this child that he had that night. So when he didn't kill Agog and didn't destroy out the entire Amalek, he says Shaul had a shtickle Rachmanis, and that Rachmanis that he was showing in Agog, not absolute power and absolute confidence in the power of his position, that in and of itself was telling that he's not roy for the malchus. And even though we paskin and even though we hold the kaimbel and melch shemachal kvede and kvede malchal, that's dafka when he's holding on to the ikar malchusai, and he wants to forgive somebody. A king could forgive somebody. A king is allowed to pardon somebody that was mavazah him, that rebelled against him. But Shaul wanted to lower himself lower than his malchus was. Since he didn't hold of himself as anything, and didn't hold of himself as a melech, so who's mechuyev to take care of Amalek? The melech. And if he's lowering the standard of his malchus in the eyes of himself and in the eyes of Klal Yisrael, Kumtois that there's no din now to have a Milchemes Amalek. So the din to fight Amalek with the Melech is bottled now because Shaul doesn't view himself as a Melech. Who has the right to fight Amalek? Who leads Klal Yisrael in battle against Amalek the Melech? But now Shaul doesn't view himself as a Melech. So not only does he wiggle out of killing Agag, but his excuse is, I'm not a Melech. If I'm not a Melech, there's no Milchemes Amalek altogether. And what's the gather of a Melech? The gather of a Melech is like this. The Gemara says in Harius and David, very stark about it. Ezahu Nasi Zemelech. Who is a Nasi? The king. Not to be confused between the people that were Nasiim and not Malachim. Shenamar mikol mitzvahs Hashem elikav. From all the mitzvahs of Hashem. She'en al gabav el Hashem elikav. The only power on top of him, the only person who he listens to, the only person, Hashem is not a person, but the only one who he listens to is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nobody else. But if a person is afraid of Basav Adam, the fact that he has to listen to other people is not Begeder a Melech. That's why it says in Yerushalmi that all the days that David HaMelech was running away from Avshalom, if he would have sinned, if David HaMelech would have sinned and would have to bring karbonos, he could have been meskaper bekivsa v'seira, like a hedyot, and not like a soyer, like a melech, because he was afraid of a bas of Adam. So David HaMelech says, listen, I'm running away from Avshalom. Why am I running away? If I'm running away, obviously I'm afraid. I have some fear in my heart from Avshalom. If I have fear in my heart from Avshalom, that means I'm not ready to be a melech. So that's what Shaul HaMelech was doing when it came to the Milchama of Amalek. So I'm exempt. Nishtar am I exempt, but then the whole Klal Yisrael is exempt from this battle. So what are we doing? Okay. There's more to talk here. We could explain a little bit about what we said al pi the Rambam that we mentioned before. The Rambam in Perek Gimel Halacha Ches. Kol hamorid b'melech Yisrael yesh lamelech rishus lahorga afilu gazar lechem b'shar ha'am sheyelech l'makom pleni v'leholach oy shelo yotze mibeisa v'yotze chayv mitzvah v'rotze lahorga yehorig shenamar kalisha sheyamreh picha. So we see from the Rambam that only a melech has rishus to kill him, but another person has no right to kill him. And as I state in Yad Ramans in Hidron Daf Mem Ches, and the Parshas Drachim writes about this in the Drash Yud Gimel. By the way, Parshas Drachim is a sefer that addresses all these types of questions, and it'd be really, really nice if we can arrange it, B'ez Hashem Yisbarach, and have the Siyata D'Shmaya to go through the whole sefer together. So it's before from the Rambam that only if the Melech wants to kill him, Rishus B'yodai. But if the king doesn't want to kill him, he's not mechuyev to kill him. The person is not. It doesn't say in the Torah, mois yumas. It says kol isha sheyamreh picha yumas. It doesn't say that the Torah doesn't say mechuyev misa. Okay, let's get back to where we're holding. So the Rambam says in Perek Gimel Halacha Ches, kol hamered b'melech Yisrael. Fine, we saw that. So it's mavur in the Rambam that Davka, if the king wants to kill, but if he doesn't want to kill, he's not mechuyev to kill him. Eina mechuyev lahargai. This person's not mechuyev misa, and Bezdin can't even be dan him, because if the melech is not mechuyev to kill him only if he wants to, meaning the king could only kill him if he wants to, so then it's totally in the melech and it has nothing to do with Bezdin. If it's not totally in Bezdin, it's not totally in anybody else, and it's only totally in the king. And as I state beferish in the Pirushim Shnais La Rambam, in Erechin at the end of Parak Aleph, that says that if the Melech doesn't want to kill somebody who's married Kinegdoi, he's not mechuyev to kill him. If he's not mechuyev to kill him, l'choira, he's not mechuyev misa. Meaning like this, we know that if a person is mechuyev skila, if a person is mechuyev skila, so then, Bezdin gives him skila. And, the pasuk says that if they give him skila and he's still alive, then yad ha'edim tia by b'rishayna la'misai, then other people do it. If he runs away, then there's halachas of what to do if he runs away. But the thing is like this: the Gemara says that afalpi that the dalad misas are batlu, the din dalad misas are batlu. How so? If a person's chayv misa, if a person's chayv skila, either he falls off a roof or something like that, or something similar to that, and on with all the dalad misas. So kumtais that the chiyuve misa still exists, even if it's not being carried out by Bezdin, but when it comes to Morid b'malchus, so today especially we don't have that kind of malchus, so we don't have that, but it's very much totally in how the melech feels he should be done it. And we saw previously that the Rambam writes a Sefer Mitzvahs, Mitzvah Kufayin Gimel, Misha Yavra Mitzvasai, somebody who's over on the command of the king, V'la Yishmael, if doesn't listen to him, he named Mutter Lamelech Laharga B'chol Inyan Sheyirtzeh. It's mutter for the king to kill him in whichever way he wants. Kamasha Amar Rabbi Sein Wala Atzman Kalisha Sheyamreh as picha. Like our forefathers said on themselves that anybody who's not going to follow what Yeshua is going to say will die. So you see that the Rambam is ma'asav, not that it's just mutter to kill him, but that it's roy to kill him. And how does the Rambam know that? He learns it out from our pasuk. So Kum Dais, we see from here that this is what the pasuk says, Rak Chazak Ve'amatz. Because Rak Chazak Ve'amatz, like the Metzudah says, is not to be meichel on your kavod. Meaning, even if that in and of itself is only a dvar harishus, and a melech is able to be meichel on his own kavod, but if it's appropriate and proper for the king to kill this person and not to be meichel on his kavod, then that's what he should do. And that a king has to really lead the malchus with a very strong and iron fist. Now, let's just finish off the Rambam, the part of Rambam that we didn't see yet, the Rambam in Paragim Lalocha Ches, says, Ve'ein lamelech rishus la'areg ela b'sayif, the king is only allowed to kill with the sword, bilvad, v'yesh le'lesor u'lahakas b'shoitin l'chvoidoi, and he's able to arrest and to hit people with sticks, l'chvoidoi, but he shouldn't be aval yafker mammon, but he's not allowed to take away people's money, monetary things, v'mhivker harez a gezel, and if he's mafker their stuff, so then it is gezel. I mean, he has no right to their money. Bezdin, we know hefker, bezdin, hefker, but not by a melech. A melech doesn't have that right. Okay, and we'll talk about each thing as we go along. But one of the most basic ma'amekemes and our sugya is a tshuva d'chsam sefer in Chelik Arachaim Simon Reish Ches, which is a fascinating tshuva to the Marzchias, which deserves a whole shir in and of itself. But this is lashon d'chsam sefer. We'll read it inside. Yesh litmaya. There is to wonder over here. Ki b'taras Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom le'matzinu klal she'yehei rishus hamelech Yehuda v'Yisrael lahametz ish. We don't find anywhere in the Torah permission given to a king, whether from Yehuda or whether from Yisrael, to kill anybody. Gam shatia in masei alecha. Although it's true that you have to fear him, hirak midrash mi'turah de tasam alecha. It's only from a drasha, from an extra word in the pasuk. Lashon alecha shatia in masei alecha. So the lashon alecha is San Tasam Alecha is the fear of the king. But this, that a king should have permission to punish and to pain a person, to torture him, like the Rambam says, yesh lahakas peshutin, and l'chvoidoi, to pain a person, to punish a person, and most certainly to kill a person. What's the source for that? Where do we know that? Rak b'nei Yisrael amr li Yeshua. Klal Yisrael said to Yeshua, Kalisha sheyamreh es picha yumas rachazak ve'amatz. That's what Klal Yisrael said. It wasn't even coming from Yeshua, it was coming from Klal Yisrael. V'arei kosva Yeshua b'sifrei al pi Hashem yisbarach hamavur b'vabasha daf yud beis Yeshua kosav sifrei. Whatever is written in Sefer Yeshua was written mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like the Gemara says in b'vabasha daf yud beis that Yeshua wrote a Sefer al pi Hashem. So avada, it's true. Avada, it's true that Klal Yisrael said Kalisha Sheyamreh Picha. Question number one, where do you know that? And number two, Achakushya ein anavi racha lechadish. Zokushya shetzarch iyun gadol. This is a very strong question, and it needs a lot of contemplation to understand what's going on. And I didn't find anybody who can interpret it and to understand it. Ki yimi masha kosav Ramban. Parshas Bechukaisei. Only Al Pi Ramban and Parshas Bechukaisei. V'chein mikunshas Mishpatei Acherim Shaloi. Ramban also writes in the Mishpatei Acherim, the Hadach Siv Kal Cherem Asher Yochar Min Ha'Adam Liyivdei Ki Mos Yumas Ein Bei Pir Shal Pipshutei. This, that the pasuk says any cherem that a person will be macher min ha'adam and you won't be paid to him and you won't be paid to it, so he will certainly die. Has no pirish pashta pshat. Ela kol nasi bi Yisrael mikol shekein kol Yisrael shemaskimim lahachrim davar kol ha'ever al charmam chayav misa. But any nasi, any leader of the Jewish people, and certainly if the entire Jewish nation comes to the agreement to be machrim something, so being that this was bahaskamas kol Yisrael, somebody who's going to be over on the scherem is going to be chayav misa. That's why Yainison was chayav misa. And v'yivdu ha'ames Yainison v'yitiru le'acherim. And they were Paidi Yonason with this, and they were mad to the Cherem. Now, Mashakos of Rambam Mesaif Perk Yud Ches Milch Sanhedrin, this that the Rambam writes at the end of Perk Yud Ches Milch Sanhedrin, the Achan Nerag Midin Malchus, V'lei Amar Mitam Cherem. This that Achan was killed, which is the story later on in Sefer Yeshua, that Achan stole from the spoils of one of the wars. So, which was a big kasha, which was a big problem, how he was allowed to do it. And then Yeshua killed him. So the question was, how was he allowed to kill him? It wasn't mitam cherem. And if the whole lumdus of what the heter is to kill is only based on the din of a cherem, he didn't kill him al piza. It was a cherem because it was a pikia in the malchus and the tzivi of Hashem. Gam bezet hamati al malosai. And also with this I wonder about. Chada the Rambam le'mayri hasa mi ikr misasa shalachan. The ikr fact that the Achan was killed wasn't mitam cherem. But this, that a person should be killed al piyadas piv, like the Rambam says over there, without Edom, this the Rambam writes, was either a Rasha or was within Malchus. So some want to learn that this, that it's a Rasha or within Malchus, that's not going on the story of Achan, if you look at the Rambam there, but it's going on the story of the Gera Amaleki that killed Shaul. But if there were Edom, that he was over on the Cherem, so then he would be Chayiv Misa. Avalei Trichim was that. Kenenim in Acherem and Enemucher. B'chol Enenim Yericha over Lavli Yidbak B'yatchum in Acherem. Kemen Enenim Yernidachas. Lo Ene Chayiv Misa, then Zabar Pashat. So what happened over here? Somebody was over on the Cherem, says Chayiv Misa? No. No such thing. Somebody was Enenim in Acherem that was Muchar by all Klal Yisrael, or Yeshua said it should be a Cherem, that nobody should take anything from the spoils of this battle. And he took from that. That's enough for a person to be Mechuyev Misa. At worst, he's over a lab. There's a lab that a person's not allowed to be nena, not allowed to take anything from an irani dachas. If a person's nena from irani dachas, it's a lab. It's not more than that. B'dinza bar parsha. No one argues on that. But here's the bottom line. This is how we get to the bottom of it. In Kol She Yisrael and Nesiyah Ha'eda, if the entirety of Klal Yisrael were the leaders of the nation, afilu echad mishnei elu, or even just one of them, maskimim umachrimim, harei zemuchrim min haTorah v'chayv misa min haTorah. It doesn't matter what it is, but if this is what they established, this is like a minig almost, the person would be chayv misa min haTorah. V'alkein achar she'iskimu Yisrael v'amar li Yeshua, being that Klal Yisrael said this to Yeshua with haskamas Kol Yisrael, and they said to Yeshua, "V'u'adin l'chol melech," and the same would apply to any other melech in Klal Yisrael. Kol ish asher yamreh picha l'chol asher tetzavenu yumas. This that they said that we are hereby mekabel on ourselves that anybody who will rebel against you and violate a command that you gave us, he will die. Harei hecharimu kol over al mitzvos melech Yisrael. Right here and now is where this cherem is being created, and anybody who's going to be over on the mitzvos of a melech of Yisrael will be mechuyev misa. Mikamakam harei achan malvatchek var mal becher b'mei ma'ishav Yeshua oid chayvu atzmei misa al shamard b'malchus tivuye shel Yeshua. So the reason why Achan was killed is not because he was moil becher, it's because he was moil in the spoils of the war in the days of Yeshua, like the Gemara, in the days of Moshe, like the Gemara Sanhedrin on Daf Mem Beis says, and in the days of Yeshua, like we see in the Parsha in Yeshua. He's chayiv because he was over on the tzivui of Yeshua. So milvad that he was nena from the cherem, he's also over on the cherem because he was murdered in the malchus of Yeshua. Al ken hochbal anshe beskila, alfakav the shar murdered by malchus b'sayif. There's another kash over there which the Achronim are all busy with. Why did he give Achan skila? The Chayra we saw in the Rambam that a murder by malchus is chayiv with a sayif, right? The Rambam was very clear that he could only kill with sayif and not with anything else. So kum dais hayaytzim midvarenu, the merida b'malchus, the Chasam Sofer says, is mitam cherman shal Yisrael b'mei Yeshua. Anytime any king kills anybody in Klal Yisrael, Kalach obviously, is because there was a cherem that was accepted on Klal, the Klal Yisrael accepted upon themselves b'mei Yeshua. And we see that the people who rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu in the Midbar, l'nischayvu misa, avav pita hayu b'shur melech. The people that rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu weren't mechuyev misa, even though Moshe Rabbeinu had a din of a king, by he b'shur melech. Mikol malkam adayin like kiblu aleim Yisrael b'cherem l'hamis harmarit b'malchus. Klal Yisrael at that point wasn't ready yet to say that they wanted to, that they're willing to be makabel on themselves to kill somebody who's married b'malchus. As I state in Chasam Sofer, this is what the Chasam Sofer is saying, and that's what it's all about. Now, this that the Chasam Sofer says over here, that the people that rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu in the Midbar didn't have a din of married b'malchus, could explain that what Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain said to Yeshua the following. Because this that they said to Yeshua, Kol asher shamanu al Moshe kein nishma elecha. The same way we listen to everything that Moshe Rabbeinu said, we're going to listen to you. Now, Avada, everything that the whole din that they had to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu, Avada, they had to listen to Yeshua also. Whether it was B'din Navi or whether it was B'din Chacham. But they were Meisef, Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain were Meisef, Ragiya Hashem lekechi imach kasher haya Moshe. In Pasuk Yud Zayin it says that we'll only do this almost al Tanai, that Hashem is going to be with you the way He was with Moshe Rabbeinu, and then the Pasuk goes weiter to say Kol isha sheyamreh es picha v'lo yishma l'chol asher titzavenu yumas. So right now we're seeing that we're being mischadish, the din of married b'malchus chayav misa is dafka only after the Bnei Gad and Ruvain said, or Klal Yisrael said, like the Chasam Sofer learns, that they were going to listen to Raki Hashem lekecha imach. Now, why is that? Because the same way we find by David HaMelech, that David HaMelech, like this, because we saw by Shaul that what was the problem with Shaul's malchus? The reason why Shaul was not just because he didn't treat the malchus at the proper covet, and he held that he wasn't a king, which led to him thinking that he didn't have to take care of Amalek. But now, by David HaMelech, he said that he wasn't able to paskin. The Tanai in the king is that everybody has to recognize him to be the Melech. So if it's problematic, if his Malchus is problematic, then it's very shaykh that somebody who's murdered in that Malchus, it'll be problematic to kill him. Because it has to be that the Malchus is established. Just like we saw by Shaul, that the problem with Shaul was that he didn't work to establish his Malchus to establish his Zayin. He's sort of, whatever, we'll figure it out. No, we're not going to figure it out. This is Malchus. This is the most serious thing in the world. This has to be taken care of. Malchus means we get things done. So, what's going on here? But there's a Tanai in the Malchus. The din of married by Malchus is Chayav Mis is only gebait on the fact that there's a pirsum, that there's a publicity to the Malchus. And not only is there a publicity to the Malchus, but there's a publicity to how the king fears as a king. And this is what the Gemara says in Megillah Daf Yudalad and Beis, that Abigail told David that he's not able to paskin that he shouldn't paskin that Naval is a married by Malchus. Why? She'adayin liyatza tivay ba'olam. So that's the pshat why Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain told him, Raki Hashem lekecha imach. Because if Hashem is with you, then it's going to be yatza tivay ba'olam. Then people are going to know. And if you take a look at the end of Perek Vav, it says, before the pasuk starts telling us the story of this that Achan took from the spoils of the Cherem before he was killed, the pasuk says, "Vayehi Hashem es Yehoshua v'hishamay b'chol haaretz." It says that Hashem was with Yeshua, and his name was known and renowned throughout the land. That means that he had the acknowledgement of everybody throughout the land. Probably means not just the Yidden, but the Goyim as well, even though we don't need that technically. But why, l'chayr, we have to ask, what does that got to do with the story of killing Achan? But that is goof of what we're saying. That's why the Navi feels that we need to give this as a hakdama to the killing of Achan. Like the Rambam says in Hilchos Sanhedrin Perek Yud Ches, that he was killed midin ha-malchus. And how was it that he was killed midin ha-malchus? Because the malchus was established, and it was yata tivay ba'olam that he was the king, and it will be very, to get rid of the people that are trying to disturb and to violate the malchus, you have to get rid of them. And Mamela, he killed Achan as a din of Marba Malchus. And more than that, we could say that somebody's Marba Malchus Chayav Misa is to show the power that the king has. That he has a kayach from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to remove the life or to remove the person of somebody that's misnagid and rebelling against his Malchus. And L'chaira, the covet of the Melech is not separate from the Melech himself. L'chaira, it's from the Etzem Etzius and the mitzvahs of a Melech. Like the pasuk says, "Sayim tasam alecha melech shetehei masi alecha." Because if there's no chiyuv to listen to the king, and then there's not going to be a power for the king to do anything, So then what good is he? He's not a melech. Remember, a melech is the highest person in the land. So there's nobody that's above him. And that's what some sort of writes in Parsha Shoftim like that. Very interesting. I don't know if this tells to exactly to what we're saying, or it's a little bit problematic if you what we're saying. But the Radvaz writes in the Tshuva, the Berheta brings it in Archaim, so Reish Chav Daled, that a shofet that's dan, meaning on a bezdin, a shofet that's dan people in Misa, the Melech can't say anything. So, meaning a judge meaning in today's day and age, if you have somebody that can judge, a ruler or a leader that can paskin for people to be mechuyev Misa, and a melech won't say anything about it. I mean, if there's different parts of the judicial system, and one of the people can paskin that a person gets the death penalty, that judge himself has the din of a melech to make the bracha if you see a king. And he says, we say a melech hakadosh and a melech b'mishpat and davening, because that's when a person is judged on his whole life, and that's when a person is margish yoiser, a person feels and recognizes the midah of malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, another big question that we have to deal with, and we sort of mentioned in passing before, is does the melech have to go through Bezdin, or he just does what he has to do? The melech takes out his knife and shoots him, takes his knife and kills him. So it's before in the Rambam that a Mar b'malchus doesn't need a Bezdin at all, and everything is totally in the ratzon of the king. And Ba'atzem is a state in Ran and Sanhedrin, and a Yad Raman Sanhedrin. But Tyson Sanhedrin Daf Lam Revav says that the din of a murd b'malchus has to be nidin in Sanhedrin, but not all the halachas that apply in for Sanhedrin are negeya for this halacha, like Tyson says in Megillah Daf Yudalet and Beis. I think we'll stop here, and the next year will be a very fascinating shir about Pnei Yeshua Kepnei Levana. Okay, we'll stop here.